Thank you for being here. I'm Lori Mattson. I'm President and CEO of the Tri-City Regional Chamber. It's a pleasure to welcome you here today to our luncheon featuring Washington's Secretary of State, Kim Wyman. Secretary Wyman is the Chief Elections Officer, Chief Corporations Officer, and Supervisor of the State Archives. Washington's Secretary of State is elected every 4 years and is the second in line of succession to the office of the governor. Secretary Wyman is our 15th secretary, and I want to thank you so much, Secretary Wyman, for being here today and sharing the important work of your office. We're less than a month away from the best week of summer. The Benton Franklin Fair and Rodeo, now in its 70th year, is coming up soon, and the Benton Franklin Fair and Rodeo Executive Director, Lori Lancaster, is here today to talk about this exciting anniversary. So, Lori, if you could please join me on stage. Oh, here she is. Please help me welcome Lori Lancaster.
Good afternoon. As Lori said, we are celebrating our 70th year at the Benton Franklin Fair this year. It's a pretty exciting time. Obviously, this week we're all about celebrating our friends over at the Water Follies, but we wanted to give you a little update because your next meeting will be during our prime time. So in 1948, May 25th to be exact, a group of Tri-City citizens decided that this community needed a fair. Ever since then, the same spirit has held true with the volunteers who put on the event. Our board is volunteer driven. We have 15 board members currently. We were founded as a nonprofit, which a lot of people don't understand. The fair is a nonprofit organization, a 501c3, and we are a tenant of Benton County for 1 month a year out at the fairgrounds. So our work at the Benton Franklin Fair is fully focused on the event year-round and youth development, which is at the core of our mission. We're really excited to have made great strides in the past year with our rodeo. We have become the number 22 ranked rodeo in the nation out of 650 rodeos. Our event will be live streamed on the Wrangler Network this year, which is a very high honor. We've been trying for 6 or 7 years now to have them live stream our event. So people around the world will actually be able to watch it. They have about 9 million viewers on their network, which is a big deal for us. We won the Remuda Award last year, which meant we had the best rodeo stock of any rodeo in the nation for any PRCA rodeo, and won a 1000 Polaris Ranger, which is a pretty cool event, a pretty cool vehicle for us to have. We've never had anything that nice in our history, I don't think. So we're very careful with it. But we're just really happy to be part of the community. You can go to the fair August 21st to the 25th and check out a lot of the great things we do. At our core are the kids and the animals that they raise and the lessons that they learn in 4-H. Without this fair, I certainly wouldn't have become the person I am or the career that I have. Other prominent people in the community have certainly experienced 4-H and have become leaders. Look at the Visitor Convention Bureau. The new leader over there is a very big fan of 4-H and grew up in that system. So I think it's really important to remember that with all the bells and whistles of the carnival and the concerts and all the other things we have going out there, it's really about the kids, and that's why we do what we do. We want y'all to come out and have a great time and enjoy the best week of summer. So make sure to get your tickets, come to the concerts. We have Styx, we have Shaka Khan, we have Brett Michaels and Randy Hauser. And then also on Saturday night this year, we are having a local music festival. It's called Tunes, Brews, and Grub. And we have Eclectic Approach and Night Argent. We also have DJ Z-Luck and some other people who are going to do an 80s and 90s DJ set face-off afterward. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of glow sticks and a lot of fun out there. And so we want y'all to come out. And on Thursday afternoon, if you really like the fair food, every vendor will have an item for $2. So you can try as much fair food as you want for $2 a try. So that is the day to be there. So if you like the paint parties you've seen at the area wineries, we'll also have those in our wine garden. So please come out and see us for the best week of summer, August 21st to the 25th.
Thanks, Lori. I know the kids and 4-H and all that's important. I wondered if she was going to get to my favorite part of the fair, which is all that food. And $2 elephant ears, that's crazy. So that's super, super exciting. Our Good Health is Good Business 8-week challenge wrapped up in June. The Tri-City Regional Chamber has been coordinating this challenge since 2012. One of our founders, John Kirk, is here, as a matter of fact. The program was developed to provide employers, both large and small, an employee wellness program that they might not otherwise have the time or the means to coordinate. We had nearly 500 people registered this year for our challenge, signaling that many Tri-Citians are excited to participate in workplace wellness programs. I want to again thank Basin Pacific Insurance and Benefits for being our premier sponsor. You're here. Did I get a woo over there? Appreciate your sponsorship. And we want to just share the winners of that with you, even though it wrapped up in June. We didn't have a luncheon in June. Of the 84 teams that participated, a team from Gold's Gym, the Bee's Knees, took first place. Our team, the Giza Gold Diggers Convino, took second place, and a team from Lord's Health, team Pretty Tough, took third place. And I know some of them might be here, so you might want to raise your hands or wave at us if you're here. Additionally, we had 79 people participate in the individual challenge. So if you don't have a team, you can do this by yourself. Our first place finisher was DJ Moore. Second place was Jared Starkle, and our third place was Kelly Jurasic. So please help me congratulate all of our winners for our Good Health is Good Business Challenge, and a great work to all of you. So thanks so much. I do want to give a special recognition to, we had 3 organizations that had really high participation within their employees. Lord's Health had 66 people participate, so that was probably about a dozen teams or so. The City of Richland had 49 people participate, and Apollo had 31. And 12 businesses donated prizes for weekly giveaways. And again, we just want to thank you all for your support and look forward to the next Wellness Challenge. Now I'd like to turn the program over to our board chair, Khurshid Sharifov. He's finishing. Khurshid, did I get you right in the middle of a bite? We're going to stretch this out. Now I'd like, so he's going to take us through the rest of the program. Please help me welcome Khurshid.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. And thank you to all the new members who have joined the chamber today. So now it's time for our program. As Lori said, today we are pleased to welcome Secretary of State of Washington, Kim Wyman. Secretary Wyman was elected in 2012 and is serving her second term. She's the second female secretary of the state in Washington's history. Secretary Wyman's responsibilities include overseeing elections, corporations, charity filings, and Washington State Library, the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library, the Washington State Archives, and a number of special programs. Kim and her husband, John, came to Washington when he was assigned to the 2nd Ranger Battalion at Fort Lewis after being stationed in Ansbach, Germany. They reside in Thurston County with their 2 children. Please help me welcome to the State Secretary of State, Kim Wyman.
Well, good afternoon. Oh, come on. You guys are business people. Your whole job is about relationship building. Okay, let's try that again. Good afternoon. Okay, not bad. Not the best I've seen, but not the worst. So you're doing good. I know you're all eating, so it's not fair. So thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. I feel very honored, and it is really warming my heart to see such an active Chamber of Commerce and so many business people in one region of our state that obviously is just knocking it out of the park. So congratulations to all of you for having such a thriving business community and making Tri-Cities what it is. I love coming over here, I can't lie. Although I have to tell you, my husband and I follow MotoGP, which is, like we were talking at the table, it's the equivalent of Formula One racing to auto racing. MotoGP motorcycles are like the sport bikes, you know, the silly kids that go too fast, but it's awesome. And I would get on a bike on a track and go 100 miles an hour. You couldn't pay me to get in one of those boats. I'm kind of having PTS just watching I can't watch it. Hydro racing is really nerve-wracking for me. So I'm really happy that you guys are going to have a great time this weekend. I probably won't watch it on TV though, because it'll stress me out too much. But today I was invited to come and talk a little bit about my office and talk about our corporations and charities division, which I have a feeling many of you are my customers, and give you some updates of what we've been doing to try to make your lives easier and easier to do business in our state. But since I was invited a few months ago, there's been a lot of discussion about elections and all the way to the Oval Office, and we've been kind of front and center in the news. So I thought I'd talk a little bit and pivot a little bit and talk about, cybersecurity and Russian hacking, and no big deal. And then I'll take questions. So let me start by talking a little bit about the Secretary of State's office, because I imagine many of you sitting in the audience right now are very polite, and you pretend like you know what we do, but besides corporations and charities, you probably have no idea what our office does. So I have a very eclectic office in that we have 4 main parts of state government that rest in my office that don't have a lot to do with each other. The most high profile and probably the most front and center is elections, and I'll come back to that at the end. Second is corporations and charities. So how many of you are my customer? How many of you deal with the corporations? Oh, that warms my heart too. The third area is library, the state library, and as you heard, Talking Book and Braille Library rests in my office, and I have a couple local librarians in the house today. Shout out. I know, it's a good thing, it's a good thing. And the state archives. So between the library and the state archives, our state's history rests in my office, and we're responsible for it, and we're really proud of it, even though for some people that might be a little like, oh wow, history is, that's great, I remember that in high school and I didn't like it then very much. But we also do some services that are kind of off the radar. If you followed the news about a month ago in Aberdeen, there was a horrible fire in their armory, which housed their local historic collection. So Kurt Cobain's artifacts from his home, in fact, were in that. And it went up in flames, and this thing, it gutted the whole building. But the actual archival documents were in the basement, and while they received a lot of water damage and smoke damage, they didn't burn up. And so my staff connected with the Aberdeen Historical Society and worked magic, and just worked very hard to restore those artifacts, and I'm pretty sure we didn't lose very many of them. And so it's a little known part of the Secretary of State's office, but it's a really important part. So those are the 4 parts that are probably the most high profile. And then we have some special programs like Legacy Washington, where we try to take the history of our state and make it interesting and tell stories and write books and connect all of you to our state's history. In fact, our next exhibit that's coming out in August is going to be 1968. And it was a really pivotal year in American history, but Washington state history, it was just off the chart, some of the things that happened here in our state. So that'll be rolling out as an exhibit in our office, but also it'll have a lot of materials for K through 12 teaching and try to connect kids to our state's history. And then the other program that I'm really proud of that is very small and little known, but really important, is our address confidentiality program. And what this does is it protects the addresses, the physical addresses of survivors of domestic violence and stalking. And it started about 26, 27 years ago, because what they found is perpetrators would find their victims by public records requests. They'd call the phone company or they'd call the gas company and say, hey, is Kim Wyman a customer of yours? What's her address? And because it's a public record, they'd have to give it up. And so this program was started to give a post office box to those survivors, and all of their mail comes to us, and then we disseminate it to their actual physical address. We also protect, with the help of the county auditors, we protect their voter registration and marriage licenses and certificates, because that was the other way that they were found. And we have over 4,000 participants statewide in that program. They come to us through organizations that deal with them as clients. And the really disturbing part and statistic is half of those participants are children. So really important work. We're really proud of it, and we take it really seriously because we have their lives in our hands. So I'm proud to tell you that the program has been very successful over that time. Only one person in the time since it came up in the early 90s has been found, and it had more to do with them not following the parameters of the program than it did the program itself. So anyway, but what I thought I'd start today is talk a little bit about what we're doing in corporations with a new system that's designed to make your lives much easier, and give you a little bit of background about what our office does. So the Corporations and Charities Division of the Secretary of State's office is responsible for filing new companies and new charities or nonprofit organizations, and then also doing the annual report filings. And I can only imagine, because my husband is the HR director for a company in Fife, how frustrating it can be to work with state government as a business owner. Okay, none of you feel that way, right? Yeah, I know how it is. So I want to just start with saying, the purpose of why you file with our office is really to give consumers and give all of you information about organizations or businesses you want to do business with. People you want to give money to as a nonprofit or a charity, or a business you may want to find out more about because you want to maybe partner with them. You can go to our site and get information that's public. And so the information that you have to file in your annual report, for example, is really designed to give that public access, so that if you think about some of the other areas of state government that you have to file with, Department of Licensing or Department of Revenue, a lot of the information that you give to them is not public information and can't be shared. And the information you give to us is so that people can make good business decisions. We also register foreign businesses, and this would just be any out-of-state business. And so we have charities and commercial entities that work in our state. If they solicit donations in any way, they have to register with our office. And to give you perspective of the volume that we deal with, we have over 550,000 registered entities. Of those, more than 55,000 are Washington nonprofit corporations, and 16,000 are registered charities in our system. And again, kind of the most important thing about that as consumers is this is a place where you can go and kind of make sure and do a double check that somebody you're thinking about giving money to at the grocery store, or somebody that solicits you over the phone, you can actually take some time and get some information about that organization to make sure they're legitimate. So some of you may have heard me talk a couple years ago when I was first running for this office, and I talked a lot about trying to make it easier to do business in Washington, because I really do believe that a thriving business economy in a community makes a difference. And the easier we can make your job, the more time you have to spend on making your business grow and get better. And so one of the areas that I started working on was to try to update our system. Our system was very manual, and any of you who have worked with the Secretary of State know that if you did your annual report, or you had to re-register, it might have taken you days or weeks to get your information back if you were a new company registering, for example. So we wanted to try to compress that time down and make it much easier. In fact, make it so you didn't even have to come to our office at all. Many of our customers, when I first took office, had to drive to Olympia to do business with us. And so we've been in the process over the last 4 years of really trying to upgrade our computer system. And any of you who have ever followed a state implementation of a computer system know that they don't always go well. And I didn't want to be one of those. So we really took our time, spent a lot of time talking to many of you across the state to find out what your needs were and what you really wanted in a system. And out of that, we created a system called, let me make sure I get it right, the Corporations and Charities Filing System, or CCFS, because we're all about acronyms in state government, I have found out. So we did a soft launch of this back in November for a couple of reasons. One, again, I didn't want to be that state agency or office that was front page news. And we started letting people go on the system and use it. And it's rocking our world, and hopefully it's rocking yours as well. We not only allow you to file online and do things that are real-time filing. You file and you're actually live and up in the system. You can also now do searches of all of the documents that we have and get them in real time. and get them immediately and not have to contact our office to have us send you something. And let's see, we also have a self-service option for managing multiple accounts. But I think probably the thing I would really recommend to you is that, and this one is really important if you're not aware of it, you can sign up for our email subscription service. And what that does for you as business owners, and is probably the most important thing that you could have, any change to your record that happens, you're going to be notified. And as we know in the online world and cyber attacks and all those things, that we do see sometimes there's some fraudulent activity where people have figured out how to get into your records and maybe change the board of directors or change something in your records. Now you'll be notified if there's any change that's made. And that's just another kind of trying to give you another tool in your toolbox to prevent fraud and have somebody mess with your documents. So I highly recommend that. One of the things that was a huge battle in the last legislative session, and since there's cameras in the room, I'll temper my remarks, but for those of you who file your annual report, the Department of Revenue for the last, since I've been in office, probably the last 15 years or so before I got here, we're actually processing your annual reports. But everything that you got as a consumer looked like it came from my office, which I thought was kind of problematic because their approach to customer service is different than mine. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And so with our new system, what we started to realize is we could actually take that process back and we could do it and not charge you the $11. Now, $11 to a corporation, let's face it, that's, you know, as they say in Olympia, budget dust, which is a term I hate, by the way. And so we started to move forward with it, and we let revenue know, and we let all of the stakeholders know that we were going to stop collecting the $11 fee in the beginning of 2018. This did not go over well, but I'm happy to tell you that by not collecting that $11 fee, we're returning $5 million back to the business community to let you decide what should happen with that money instead of us. So I'm kind of happy about that. It wasn't very fun in Olympia, though. I'll just say that. It was not fun. But since we've launched our system, over 130,000 accounts have been created as user accounts, and currently 84% of our filings are now done online. And this is just a soft launch. We haven't really publicized it too much, and we're getting great return. And 82% of those filings are successfully filed without you having to deal with anyone in my office. So the system so far is working well, and we're happy about it. Our goal is to have about 90% of those filings to be done online and make it easier for you. And the only, so far, although today we'll do the first test, so far the only negative complaint I've had about the system is that we don't accept checks. I have one good friend who manages a lot of different properties, and he wants to use checks. I didn't even know we still did that. But anyway. Another part of the Corporations and Charities division is the education that we try to do for nonprofits and charities. One of the things that we really started realizing in the last, really 4 or 5 years is with things like Sarbanes-Oxley that were implemented, after the crash of some of the companies like Enron. A lot of that regulation, that onerous regulation on nonprofits is very overwhelming because many times they're small, they have volunteer boards, they don't know about the regulations. So we started doing training by partnering with the Washington nonprofits to provide basic training from board governance to financial literacy to just helping them be good corporate stewards and also helping them to understand the responsibility that they have when they sit on a board. Many of you who probably is this room, I imagine many of you sit on boards of directors of various nonprofits. You realize that you have personal liability in the decisions that are being made on those boards. That's a game changer. And so we're trying to get those kinds of, that kind of information out and of course help with compliance with state regulations. So we also do donor outreach and education about how to give wisely. Right now we're partnering with the FTC and the Attorney General's office because the FTC has found that there are a number of veterans organizations that are operating across the country that really don't give the money to veterans. but they collect a lot of it. And that, so we're trying to do an education campaign to let you know as consumers that every for-profit or nonprofit organization that operates in our state has to register with my office. And you can actually find out what percentage of every dollar goes to the service. And some of them are appalling. We do have some where it's 96, 97% is overhead. And of your dollar, 3 cents goes to the service. So I really encourage you, before you give people money, to check out that information on our website so you can make informed decisions. And okay, so I think I've got all the stuff on charities and nonprofits. Oh wait, one more page. Oh, the last area I'll kind of get on your radar is trademarks. So in Washington State, you as a business, if you want to do a trademark, you can do that through our office, and it kind of goes parallel to the federal trademarking. We have about 6,000 active trademarks right now in Washington State. And interestingly, the laws related to trademarks haven't been updated since 1989. So we're going to be working on that and just kind of doing a gut check to make sure it still makes sense. And we'll be working with some stakeholder groups from around the state. If you have an interest in that, please contact me or my office, and we'd love to engage you with that. And an example of some of the things we'd like to clean up is right now, if you want to submit a trademark, you have to give us 3 samples of, let me get this right, 3 samples of merchandise with a proposed trademark on it. Okay, that seems silly. So we're going to try to reduce that to 1 and make it more streamlined. So that's some of the work that we're doing, and I hope that we're doing a good job of meeting your needs, and if we're not, please let me know. Okay, so, and I have no idea, how are we doing on time? Okay. So now let me shift gears to elections, because certainly my world has been catapulted front and center nationally to the, I think, the consciousness of every voter and every citizen in the country. Elections since 2016 have been scrutinized, and people are paying more attention to them. And one of the main things is cybersecurity. So if you remember back in the middle of 2016, I certainly do, we in my office started seeing activity on our servers related to our election system. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about voter registration, which is all of your records. So your names, addresses that we use to get you the right ballot on election day. And we've had this system now since 2006 in Washington State. And that's separate from the tabulation system. And I'll come back to tabulation in a minute. But the nice thing about us having that system up for as long as we have, and having things like election night reporting, we've been really dealing with cybersecurity issues for 15 to 20 years. So while to many of you some of this might be new, we've been aware from the moment we went online that we had to protect all of this information at a level that was higher than probably most of us have in our homes and our daily lives, or even our businesses. So in 2016, because we'd had the system up for about 10 years, we knew what normal activity looks like, and we are monitoring it constantly. We started seeing activity that wasn't normal. And we blocked a few IP addresses, and were concerned, thought that they might be foreign actors. We contacted the FBI and started working with Homeland Security. And about the same time as this was happening in our state, the President Obama, declared elections as critical infrastructure. And I've learned a lot about the designation of critical infrastructure in the last 2 years. Basically what it does is it puts elections and all of the systems evolved across the country on the same level as the power grid or a water system, in terms of it's a national security issue. And if you really take a step back and think about it, it is. At a foundational level, if you all lose confidence in what I do and what my colleagues around the state and around the country do, democracy suffers. And so this all started happening, and I was one of the secretaries of state that was a little nervous, to be honest with you, because while I really wanted the resources that Homeland Security could bring to our state, from monitoring to giving us updates of what they were seeing around the country and that type of thing, testing of our system. The strength of American elections is the fact that we have a very decentralized system. So there's no one person who gets to count all the votes. And that's a good thing. We have 7,000 people across the country like me who are either at the state level, local level, all the way down to cities and townships. That's a good, healthy thing. It can be frustrating at times because, you know, mistakes do happen and they make front page news, but at the end of the day, that's a strength. And I was afraid that if you start opening the door to critical infrastructure that, you know, Congress or the feds might start thinking they should run elections, and we don't want that. So cautiously we moved forward and we started partnering with Homeland Security. President Trump also did the critical infrastructure designation. So we've been moving forward over the last 2 years, working in partnership with Homeland Security. And I like to refer to it as an arranged marriage. It's been a little rocky. The first part was a little rocky, but it's been very good. And I think now our communication channels are much better, and we are learning an infinite amount of information, not only about what's happening across the country, but we're able now to have sensors in our system that will help detect activity that's inappropriate or suspect, and have that connectivity to all those entities across the country, which again is going to help strengthen our system. So basically, as we moved forward, my favorite part of 2017 was, and this was like a week after I got back to work. Let me side note here, because some of you might know. Last year I had a little battle with cancer. Okay, I had a big battle with cancer, and I'm doing good. Everything's good. Clean scan about a month ago, so life is good. Thank you. But I was out of the office for about 3 months, and about a week after I got back from all of that, the assistant director to Homeland Security, deputy director, maybe was her title, Jeanette Monfort, was on national news because she was being interviewed by a congressional committee. And one of the members of Congress point blank asked her, did the Russians hack our system? To which she answered, yes, 21 states were hacked. To which we all went, what? That's the first time we had heard it. This was in June of 2017. So of course, naturally, all 50 of us said, okay, which states? Then my favorite federal response of all time, we can't tell you. What? We can't tell you because it's classified. Okay, that's awesome. And so from June until September, we started having, this was the rocky part of the marriage, we started having conversations because what became very apparent to us early on is their world is about classifying material, and it needs to be. And our world is about transparency, because it needs to be. I need to instill confidence in every one of you in this room, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, that you had access to registering and voting, that your ballot was secure, it was counted accurately, and the results reflect that. And if I don't do that, I'm not doing my job. So we did this wonderful dance for about 3 months, and they finally realized they needed to release the 21 states' names. So again, this was my favorite part of last year. They called us on Thursday in October to let us know they were going to call us on Friday to let us know which states there were. And this was a conference call with 50 secretaries of states on it. Okay, so we're politely saying, that's awesome and stuff. Why don't you just tell us now? No, we can't do that. Okay. So our suggestion was, why don't you then create a press release listing the 21 states? No, we can't do that. Okay, you do understand that from when the first call's made, there will be an AP reporter calling every state, and by the time you finish the 21st call, they will know. Oh, that won't happen. Okay. Kind of like teenagers. Okay, you're right. Don't listen to us. Please go. So that's exactly what happened. And Washington, unfortunately, was one of the 21 states, so you might have heard that. I'm here to tell you the good news, and this is actually a success story. Of those 21 states were attempts that were made into our voter registration systems. Only 2 they did get access into them. Washington's firewalls and system held. Now, I'm not saying that to brag, and I'm not saying that to say that we're perfect all the time and we're impenetrable, because any one of you, and I'm pretty sure it's everyone in this room that's online, is exactly in the same boat as we are. They are trying to get to your information 24/7, 365. They have to get it right once. We have to get it right 100% of the time. And the odds are stacked in their favor. It's what I've learned over the last 2 years to a level I didn't expect. But the good news is that out of all of these discussions and this frustration, my colleagues and I asked Congress to free up money that was left over from the Help America Vote Act. And that happened surprisingly in a span of about 3-4 weeks. I've never seen Congress move this fast. And it was about $380 million that was distributed to all of the states. We received $8 million here in Washington State. And what we're using that money to do, and it dovetails really nicely with a project I'll tell you about in a second, is we're just beefing up our firewalls and our system security, because that's just a no-brainer. You can always do that. 2, we're building our IT team up a little bit, because we're bringing up a new voter registration system with the county auditors across the state. All 39 counties will be connected to the system and use it on a daily basis. So we're already thinking about the security issues related to that. This money will help us to reinforce it even more. And more importantly, we can now go and do some training and help counties understand what they're facing. And if you think about what we face in our office, I have a county that has over 1 million registered voters in it, King County. I have a couple counties in Eastern Washington that have 1,500. You know, the capability of Columbia County is very different than the capability of King County, just by resources, if nothing else. So what we want to try to do with that money is level that playing field so that Columbia County or Asotin County has the same, confidence that King does. And so that's a piece of it, and training and awareness is a part of it. We'll also be going out and doing testing of their systems. We won't, but we're partnering with people like Homeland Security. The State Auditor's Office is helping us with some of that. And then our most recent partnership is with the Washington National Guard, which again, you have to be careful with, because no one wants the military to be doing elections. But if you think about it, because we're home to Microsoft and Amazon and Google, we have a lot of great techs in business who happen to be members of the National Guard. So our state, you probably didn't know this because I didn't know it until a couple of weeks ago, our state has the top cybersecurity team in the country in terms of National Guard. And we already partner with them because we've been working on continuity of operations plans for about 3-4 years now. And they're obviously a great resource because they have things like generators and tents and things you could use in a flood or an earthquake or an emergency on election day. So this dovetails nicely with that, and they're going to help us with some of the testing of our system and of some of the county systems and give us feedback of what we can do to make them better. So I could go on, but hopefully I've made you feel better. And the challenge, of course, with cybersecurity stuff is it's a lot like Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. And cybersecurity is no different, because the more information you share, that just gives the hackers more things to know what your system is about. So anyway, let's see. I have no idea what I'm doing on time. Am I good? 5 more minutes. And that with questions or questions after? With questions. Okay. Keep going? Okay. So the last note I'll end on is, as you know, we have a primary election coming up in August, just a couple weeks away. If you look around the room, there's a couple people that are kind of doing this. They're candidates, just in case you're wondering. And it's close to primary election day, so that's why they are acting that way. For this election, we're doing this election and the general election statewide. We are doing a pilot, if you will. Every single one of you will have access. You should have received your ballots by now, but you will have access to return prepaid postage. I could do a whole 30-minute thing on that. We'll just leave that there. The important notes there is that drop boxes are free, and they are open until 8 p.m. on election day. If you choose to use a stamp or use no, you're not going to use a stamp. If you choose to use the prepaid ballot return envelope that your county election office sent you, make sure you get a postmark before election day or on election day. And I say that because in the modern era, I don't think people realize that blue mailboxes or even your post office now may close before or have the last pickup before 8 o'clock on election night. So just because you put it in the blue box on election day doesn't mean it's going to get that day's postmark. So make sure you check the pickup time, or if you're at the post office, check and see when it closes. So the last thing I'll say is we have, right now, my office is checking the petitions of 3 initiatives. And if you're not I should have mentioned that when I talked about my election oversight in Washington State. One part of our office is the election initiative and referendum process. And so that goes through my office, and we have one initiative in particular, well, we have two, now I think about it, two initiatives that are a little controversial, that look like they'll be on the ballot. One is a gun, I want to use the right term. It's to put more restrictions on gun ownership. And so some of you may have kind of been following this. It's $13.95, pretty sure, $16.95, excuse me. And so just for the record, since I heard from a lot of folks over here in Tri-Cities, my responsibility is that when any of you want to do an initiative, you file an initiative with our office for $5, and then we work with you to create a ballot title, and the AG creates that, and then there are parameters as a petition gatherer that you have to put on the petition. You have to put the full text of the measure, for example, on the back of the ballot, so you as voters can read it and know what you're signing. And then the front has things that it has to have on it too, like an oath that says that this contains the full, true, correct, ballot measure and all. And then how many signature lines you can have on it and everything. I say all of this because this petition has been one of the most controversial ones I've had since I've been Secretary of State. And before they turned in the petition signatures, we had two lawsuits by the Second Amendment Foundation. The court kicked both of them back, which is very typical. The court doesn't like to weigh in on initiatives until all of you get a chance to vote on them or sign petitions, because constitutionality always happens on the back end. Court doesn't weigh in until it's actually been passed. So, but what happened is we got a copy of the initiative petition, and it had really small font on the back, literally 6-point font. And if you've ever seen a bill or a bill that's being proposed, if you're going to take out language, you strike through it. And if you're going to add language to existing law, you underline it. And that's just standard. We see it in every initiative I've ever seen has this type of presentation. This one didn't. So we started meeting with our attorneys, and interestingly, it's weird when you read the law, it does actually enlighten you. And I tend to be one that thinks my job is to follow the law. And so the law is very specific about these petitions and what they need to look like. And we didn't think it met that section of the statute. It's section 29A 72-100. And then interestingly, when we looked at the section that actually gives me as Secretary of State the authority to reject those petitions, it exempted that part of the law. I can reject it if they didn't include the oath. I can reject it if they don't have enough signatures. And I can reject it if they don't get it turned in on time. Anything else, I have to accept it. So it was fun times in my office. We had an inundation of email, and they were really nice and warm. So much fun. Made me feel good. Phone calls, yeah. But we stayed the course, and I will be honest with you, I had pressure. I had a lot of pressure put on me by a lot of folks. Rejected anyway. It's like, well, yeah, see, I took an oath of office to uphold the law, so I can't. So where it is right now, they are literally checking the petitions right now of 3 initiatives that were submitted to our office. I anticipate that one will probably be finished by the end of this week. I anticipate we will be served with another lawsuit, and we'll go from there. But we're going to follow the law. I do have concerns. My biggest concern is the precedence that this process sets, because my job, as I see it, is to not only force the law and interpret the law, but protect the process. So each one of you has a constitutionally protected right to initiative and referendum. If you have a great idea, you have the same standing that any legislator in Olympia has to create a law. And that's initiative or referendum. And my job is to protect that, to protect your access to it, and to protect that system. And my concern is that if we let this one in, what are we going to see in future petitions? Are you going to be facing a 4-point font, 8.5 by 11 sheet when you're trying to sign a petition? And so we're working with our attorneys to make sure we're protecting your rights too. Okay, so enough about that thing. I think we have a little time. Love to open it up to questions. Everybody's afraid. And I think we have microphones.
I'm coming.
So a question for you. We had a little quiz on how many registered voters there are in Washington State. Out of those, how many vote in kind of different types of elections, and how does that compare to other states?
So we have just over 4.2 million registered voters out of the 7 million residents that we have here in Washington State, and it varies. So in this pattern, I've been in elections since 1993, so 25 years. I was 10 when I started. Anyway, bad old joke. But old's bad too. So anyway, the cycle is a 4-year cycle. Always the highest is presidential years. So ironically, most of you, not you, I know you're all perfect voters, but most people only vote once every 4 years. And that's why you have that peak in a November presidential election. That's the highest turnout in the cycle. The next highest would be this election cycle, midterm elections, even year non-presidential elections. So in presidential, we see in our state anywhere usually from high 70s to high 80s. Mid-80s, I'm being generous there. And we lead the country. We're always in the top 10. It's hard to compete with some of the other states because their laws are a little bit different, but overall we do really well. Vote by mail is part of that, but I think also it's culture in the state. The lowest turnout elections are those odd year, particularly post-presidential. Primary is the lowest every year. That's always post-presidential primary election. You'll see just horrible turnout. 20%, 25%, and I think this last time it was below 20% in some places. Eastern Washington, you all tend to vote more. Good job, appreciate that. I've heard many people for many years try to point to why, and we've spent a lot of time in our state and across the country removing barriers and doing things to make it easier and all, and oddly it hasn't changed. Those patterns haven't changed that much. We tend to, like I said, we tend to be on the front end of that, but I'm not sure. And I'm to the point now where I think it's my job is about voter education, getting the information out. Turnout's great. Every ed board I sit in front of, they always ask, how I'm gonna increase it. And that's certainly what, politically, when I've been on the ballot, that's been the focus. But at some point, I think government's job is to give you the information and let you make informed decisions and vote and make sure that we're balancing access and security.
My question is sort of two parts. The first is, how do you clean up the voter rolls? And the reason I'm asking this is I've got 3 daughters who are now married and have moved out of state, and we still keep getting ballots for them.
Well, you need to let me know that, and I'll take care of that.
And then the second question is, how do you proof the ballots that come in? Because we throw these 3 ballots away every time, but I got to imagine there's people out there who maybe are filling in those extra ballots they receive, and I'm wondering how you check on that.
Yes, well, we do both. So list maintenance is what we call it in my world, is an ongoing thing, and one of the upsides of vote by mail is once a year, at a minimum, every single registered voter in this state receives a ballot at their home. And any of those that come back to us because they've done an address change or the post office has information that they don't live there any longer, we can update their information accordingly. Your 3 daughters, I'd have to look and see why they're still registered. There's a whole lot of reasons why. Now, I will tell you that we don't want to cancel people erroneously, but we certainly don't want to have dead wood on the rolls either. My guess is none of your daughters have registered in another state. Because if they have, the state's supposed to notify us by federal law to let us know so we can take them off the rolls. And we have a lot of processes we have to follow to do that. But we're also partners, so we do a lot of maintenance at the county level to try to keep those rolls up to date. But beyond that, we're part of an organization called ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center. And this was a project that I got to work on for the last 10 years. We now have 22 states that are participating, and 1 is the District of Columbia. And what we're doing is it's an information sharing system. So your data is put into this system. It's one-way hashed, it's anonymized, so what's sent is your information, but they can't see it. And the computer is data matching, much like what private industry has done for the last 30 years. We use the model that you all use to do business. And that data is compared, and then that information goes back to the states so we can update it. So if someone has changed their Department of Licensing, they've changed their address in, they've moved to Colorado, we will get that information from Colorado, and then we'll be able to follow up with the voter and remove them. I could bore you with a lot of details, but that at the high level, we're trying to keep them as clean as we can. But did you realize that 10% of our state, and this is true across the country, moves every year? 1 in 10 voters moves every year. And it's weird, they don't always think to tell us. Rude. Anyway, and then in terms of the security on the back end, so that's the outgoing. And then the other thing is, you could just put a note to your county auditor that they don't live here any longer, and they will be removed. Again, what the county auditor would do is try to send to every known address for your daughters and get the updated information. But remember, and I don't know what your daughter's situations are, that just because you don't live in our state doesn't mean you can't vote in our state. If you are in the military, if you are a military service member's spouse or dependent, if you are on business and you're working out of state or out of country, but you consider Washington your residence, you still have a right to vote here. Even if you're going to be gone for 5 years, if you're a student, 10 years, if you consider this home, now you can only pick one. You don't get to vote in each state you live in. You can only vote once, but you can pick Washington. So your daughters, it probably doesn't sound like that's the case, but there are reasons why people could live out of state and still have the right to vote. My daughter, who I'll brag for a second, is a Marine Corps JAG officer in Yuma, Arizona. No Marines. Wow. Yeah, all the Army and Air Force guys are like, yeah, whatever, Marines. We're not going to even do it. So she is out of state, but she's still voting in Washington State. Probably to vote for me, but whatever. She considers this her primary residence. So and then how do we check? So when the ballots come back, you all are familiar with the envelope that you have, and it has an oath, and you attest to that oath, you sign it and date it, and you send it back to your county auditor's office. Now, until you've actually come to our offices and seen this, most people don't know or believe this, but they check every return signature against your signature on file. Every one in every county, and you can't count those ballots until it's verified. If it doesn't match for some reason, if it's a little off or it's changed, we will contact you, they will contact you, and give you an opportunity to cure that signature and update it. And that does two things. One, it helps people whose signatures have changed over time. And more importantly, it's allowing you as a voter to know that somebody has returned a ballot to you. Because I guarantee you, if your county auditor sends you a ballot that says, hey, your signature doesn't match and you haven't voted, you're going to be on the phone right away. So that's another one of the security checks that we have. It's kind of unknown, but that's one of the reasons we do it. Once that signature matches, the county gives, the election official gives your voter record credit. We call it giving it credit. Because you could return more than one ballot to us. Mechanically you could. But we have safeguards in place to make sure we only count one. And there's a number of reasons why people might return more than one. And when we think they're doing it to, perpetrate fraud, we actually follow up with the prosecuting attorney and the sheriff and things like that. But and then once that's cleared all those things, then it's processed and tabulated. Does that answer your question? Does that make you feel better? Okay. Other questions? See, now I've scared you all off, huh? All right. Oh, I'm getting the hook. That's what it is. Oh, wait. Up to you. Up to you. I have one more question. Okay, one more. Okay. Yes? Okay, this is usually a 20-minute presentation. I'm going to give you the speed version. The question was the Dino Rossi Gregoire recount and how Rossi won twice and then lost in court. What I will say, the speed format is that back in 2004, we had 39 separate voter registration lists. Now we have one. And a lot of the problems that surfaced out of that recount were a result of that. So the counties couldn't talk to each other. You could be registered in multiple counties. You'd get ballots in multiple counties, and you could vote them on multiple counties, and it would all appear legal. A lot of things happen in there. There's a lot to this day that people believe there was fraudulent activity in King County. What I can tell you is the things that I saw. I was a county auditor in Thurston County at the time, so I'm Brenda Chilton or Matt Beaton's counterpart. And were mistakes made? Absolutely. Was it voter fraud? Hard to say. I'll give you one quick one, 30 seconds. You hear a lot about, oh, they found trays of ballots, and that happened in 4 or 5 counties. King County was the most notable. And I've heard many, many people be frustrated. Oh, they just manufactured and they counted them. That's not what happened. So I want you to picture this for a second. Our world are mail trays. So you have about 350 to 400 return ballot envelopes in a given tray. And in a warehouse, you have those and people are moving them all the time. And so the first person puts the mail tray down on the table in the corner, and then another person comes by with 10 empty trays and puts it on top of that. This is what happened. No one knows that there's those ballots sitting there until election day, and it comes and goes, and in some cases certification comes and goes. They're cleaning up and they go to move them, and it's like, oh my God. So now my question to you to think about is that every single one of those envelopes, the voter voted once, they were eligible, their signature matched. In fact, the voter did every single thing right, but because somebody made a mistake, their ballot wasn't counted. And I want you to picture that one of those ballots is yours. How many of you believe we shouldn't have counted them? That's what we were faced with. But that was in a very politically charged environment. This is nice and sane, and we can talk about it. There, the stakes were high, and no one was operating logically. Everybody was emotional. So what I can tell you is we've made a lot of progress since then. King County, back then, probably the biggest problem with King County, there were a lot, but one, they didn't have an election official. They do now. The other one was there was sort of a close enough is good enough attitude. Now they employ Six Sigma. Now they employ Lean. Now they account for every single ballot that's returned. They can tell you when it arrived, who touched it from the moment it was accepted to the moment that certified and put in a box. So that's a huge step forward for our state, and that's true of every county in the state. So we've made a lot of progress, and 2004 was a tough election. I kind of have PTS from that too. Anyway, thank you so much for let me be here. Thank you. Yes.
Wow, thank you, Secretary Wyman, for being here with us and speaking to us and sharing some of the insights from your office. That's great. Thank you again to i3 Global for sponsoring today's luncheon, Basin Pacific Insurance and Benefits for sponsoring our very successful Good Health is Good Business Challenge, the wonderful staff of the Red Line Hotel and Conference Center in Pasco for hosting us today. And a sincere thank you to all of you for coming out to the luncheon today. Our next luncheon, Congressional Update with Congressman Dan Newhouse, is Wednesday, August 22nd, here at the Red Lion. Congressman Newhouse will provide us with a legislative update from Washington, D.C., as well as discuss key federal issues that impact Central Washington and the Tri-Cities. He's also planning to take some questions from the audience. And you actually have an opportunity to ask those questions today using the Slido app again. So if you can open up the browser and go to Slido, same code, TCRCC, and then you can type in your question there. You can even ask it anonymously if you like to do that. And we'll compile those and give them to Senator when he's here. And we look forward to seeing our next very informative and fun event. Today's meeting will be broadcast on Pasco City Television and Richland City View, channels 191 and 192 respectively, on Charter Cable in Pasco and Richland. The meeting will also be streamed via YouTube on both cities' YouTube channels, so you can rerun them there. And thank you again for all coming today to luncheon. Enjoy the rest of the day.